What I'm trying to say here is that every source that is feeding your mind with information from society itself is subject to corruption, deception, misinformation, and delusion. And each source itself, notice, it's being fueled by individuals like yourself who were also born at some point in life and didn't know what the hell was going on. And how did they know which sources to trust? So, for example, you might say, well, Leo, but the people who wrote the Wikipedia page about the Holocaust here, these were highly esteemed editors of Wikipedia. They went through some sort of review process. They weren't just random Joes. These were like academics. Many Wikipedia pages are written by academic types. You might make that kind of claim. Okay, but see, now what's happening is that you're offloading the authority of the Wikipedia page onto these so-called academics, if you believe that academics wrote that page. And I don't even know, maybe they did, maybe they didn't. That itself is somewhat unknown because Wikipedia itself, how does Wikipedia vet who gets to write those articles? Well, you see, that just pushes the problem down one level. Can we really be sure that the people who wrote that article were truly objective? What kind of biases did they have? Where did they go to school? What kind of schooling did they get? And then that takes us into school. Because see, each time we're going to be questioning any one of these elements of the web, we're always going to be pushing the can down the road, kicking the can down the road, down one level, and appealing to some other authority. So the web, the way it works is that it always appeals to something else within the web in order to justify itself and to construct this sense of truth and reality, right? So now we get into the education system. How do you know you can trust the education system? The schools, the universities, academia, these are all elements of this social matrix that we're discussing. School boards determine what kind of things are taught in school, but how do we know that the things taught in school are actually the things that need to be taught? How do we know that that itself is not part of the deception? And who's controlling these school boards? Well, a lot of times it's parents. Parents get angry when something is taught in school that they think shouldn't be taught. Okay, but then those parents, where do they get their notions of what should be taught in school and what shouldn't be taught in school? What's right and what's wrong to be taught in school? Well, that again, so you see that pushes the problem down one level, back one level, because those parents, you can't just assume that those parents were omniscient. They were born just like you, ignorant. They knew nothing when they were born. And where did they get most of their information about life and reality and what's right and wrong? From school. From the last generation. And how did that generation figure out what should be taught in school? Well, from the previous generation, you see. So we have this sort of infinite regress problem. We have universities, we have academia, we have all the grades that you get going through the school system. This all influences you. Credentials, diplomas, awards, peer review, journals in which you publish your research. If you're going for a PhD and you're doing serious university research, you got to get published by these journals. Your career depends upon it. So you got to write what these journals will accept. What are these journals willing to accept? What are their biases? Who's running these journals? These journals, of course, are run by people just like you from the previous generation. They're a little bit older. Maybe they're 30 years older than you. They got their PhDs in a similar way you got your PhD. They also got their PhD by writing articles and papers and doing research to be published in journals. What are the standards of these journals? What kind of epistemology do these journals have, the editors at these journals? How do we know we can trust these editors? Who educated these editors? The same university system? So you see, what you're going to see here is you're going to see this sort of vicious circularity and this sort of deep, profound incestuousness within human epistemology. What I'm describing here is sort of a collective human mind. If we take the mind of mankind as a whole, as a species, And the question is, how do we know that this mind itself is not self-deceived? What you are going to start to notice as we add more elements to this web is that every element reinforces and justifies in a circular manner every other element in a very self-serving way. It's extremely self-serving. When you really zoom out of this whole thing and you take a look at this massive social matrix, it really is quite obvious how the self-deception is created. Because who is there that's going to check this whole system? Who is there that's responsible for making sure that this whole system is not corrupt? Because you see, the people who write the Wikipedia articles are coming from the universities. The people in the universities are coming from the schools. The people who teach in the schools are coming from universities. And the people who taught the people at universities who are going to go teach the children in the schools, they also came from universities and schools. It's extremely circular. And then people in universities nowadays will actually go to Wikipedia and read Wikipedia pages, or kids in school will read Wikipedia pages and take that as fact and reality, and then they will use that to reinforce the university and the school system.